On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I'd like to call the meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Bofi? Dr. Bofi is present. Mr. Castile?
Here.
Mr. Castile is present. Dr. Davis?
Here.
Dr. Davis is present. Ms. Ellis? Ms. Ellis is not present. Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Mr. Garvey is present. Ms. Holloway?
Here.
Ms. Holloway is present. Ms. Mellering?
Here.
Ms. Mellering is present. Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Morris is present. Ms. Orange Jones? Here. Ms. Orange Jones is present. Mr. Rock?
Here.
Mr. Rock is present. Ms. Gautier?
Here.
Ms. Gautier is present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. May we have the first item, please?
The consent agenda is ready for approval, adding items 4.1, 5.1, 5.2, 7.1, and 8.1.
We have a motion by Mr. Rock and a second by Castile. Any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
On page 82, item 5.3, consideration of fiscal dialogue as a result of the fiscal risk assessment process for 2022-2023. The recommendation is to receive.
We have a motion to receive. Mr. Castile, do I have a second? Mr. Garvey. Superintendent, do you have anything? Okay, any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
On page 88, item 5.4, consideration of LDOE contracts greater than $50,000. Recommendation is to approve.
Need a motion to approve, please? Mr. Rock, seconded by Mr. Morris. Superintendent, do we have any presentations, or do we have any questions by investment members? Okay, are there any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item.
On page 95, item 5.5, consideration of federal and state grants and allocations to LEA's Type 2 charters, Type 5 charters, approved non-public schools, and community-based organizations, competitive and other. Recommendation is to approve.
Motion to approve. Mr. Morris, do I have a second? Holloway? No, I can't. Okay. We have a second by Ms. Holloway. Any questions?
Dr. Bromley, I'm looking at, it's page 99, as I come through the contracts here and the allocation summaries. There was one that popped out because I hadn't noticed this before. I'm sorry. Page 99 on allocations amount for B3, which is Benefit 3, and CCAP, Child Care Assistance Program. I'm reading through this and noting that it's combined. Have they always been combined, these two, Benefit 3 and CCAP? I mean, is there some detailed information on this? I haven't noticed this before, that both of these programs, B-3 and CCAP, they're combined.
Karen Powell, speak to that.
Good afternoon. So, as you may know, we've done a number of pilots over the last several years, and one of them was for something called allocated seats for birth through 3 children. And so that has been so successful at meeting infant and toddler care needs in communities that we are putting this allocated seats model into our CCAP program. So our CCAP program has traditionally been voucher seats. Parents apply for care, the vouchers follow them wherever the parents move to care, and it's really been a first come, first served program in terms of their applications. And we are looking to make CCAP a hybrid program now at the direction of the federal funder to provide both voucher seats and these dedicated seats to different communities around the state.
Okay, I'm just kind of like, okay. I'm not quite following, and because it's so new, and this is, I think, this is the first time being presented with this.
We brought some earlier in the fall, for the fall semester. We brought some of these allocated seats to, I believe,
You may have brought them, but was this ever combined together, like you were saying?
Not for, yes, in August, Bessie, but not prior to this year.
Okay, so you already brought this to us with a report, like the data, how many seats, what does it cost? Is that what you reported on in August?
We brought an allocation in August for these to go paid out through the community networks.
Okay, I know this thought that you're talking about, but I also see the funding will be allocated to Ready Start networks and community networks, lead agencies that will administer these funds. This is new to me. I am not familiar with this. Do you have any information about children, the seats that are served, the cost, data, and do we have it at hand?
So we have provided these seats in each of the last 3 years, and we have increased the number of seats provided each year. So 3 years ago, we started this pilot with our preschool development grant, and we offered approximately 600 seats around the state. Then with our stimulus dollars, we brought these allocations forward to Bessie, and we provided last year approximately 3,500 seats through the community networks and the Ready Start networks to communities around the state. So this year, we are looking to serve an equal or greater number through this CCAP B2 3 seats program. We're just transitioning a program that we've been doing for the last several years.
Okay, I'm trying to follow, but is there any way possible that at our next Bessie meeting that we can have a presentation to the new board about the proposal here? I don't know if it was ever a proposal or who decided B3 and CCAP merged, combined, being a hybrid, to where we can have knowledge of this.
So you can put it on the next agenda.
Next agenda for us to understand, and it would be great at that moment with new board members to understand where the department is going. Does that prevent us from approving this allocation today?
It should. It should not. I mean, we can bring a presentation around information moving forward.
Is some of this the state general fund money that was approved from the general appropriations bill to fund those early childhood? Is that some of this?
I'm glad you're asking that, because that's
Okay,
the
I
other.
think that's where, when we're looking at state general funds, I assumed it was the allocation put into the general appropriations bill. Is that correct or not correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And
there
that was
are-
to fund those early childhood seats, right?
There's also federal dollars in here because of other,
They're not for this, not for these B2 3 seats, no.
not B3, but CCAP.
Yes.
So it's having your blending, basically, you've got CCAP, you've got federal dollars and state dollars, so that's the kind of information I would like to see, and also for the new board to be able to understand
Yeah,
the
we
basis
can,
of
we
this.
can provide those funding sources and what they provide for. But there is, I used the term we used earlier, but there is braiding of a number of funds throughout the early childhood space, because there are 6, 7, 8 different funding sources that go in, and whenever you step in whenever you step in an early care center, you don't necessarily know this is the kid that's funded this way,
Sure.
this is the kid that's
Yeah.
funded this way.
But
But we're happy to
since
bring
this is
back the
the
different
first
funding
time that this board sees this combination of the B3 and CCAP, I think it's important that we get a full view of the cost, the number of seats, the data that's behind all this and why.
Can I ask a quick question too, just, and so this may be premature because I will be doing that report in January and I'll be tuning in from home. So my question though is, on dedicated seats, And you mentioned that that's so CCAP or vouchers that are based on need. Are dedicated seats based on something other than need? And if so, what is that criteria?
No, so children in the dedicated seats or in the voucher seats all meet exactly the same eligibility requirements, including income.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
And with those requirements, I know that last year or so, we broadened the requirements. I'll say broadened the requirements, made it available to more families. I think we reduced the number of hours they had to work or be in school or whatever to qualify for CCAP monies.
We increased, yes.
So that we allowed more people to qualify for these. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
In February of 2022, we increased the eligibility for families to 85% of the state median income.
so then they could qualify for this. And I think that's when we had that whole stimulus money that we were putting to some of these as well, some of those seats.
And just in that report for next month, it might be great if you're able to do this when it comes to the wait list, to be able to look at the percentage of students on the wait list that are comprised of our old income limits versus the new income limit. Because I guess one of my concern was as stimulus money draws down, we have less money to provide CCAP seats or these new dedicated seats, and that the families that need those seats the most might not be getting it because we have raised the income limit without maintaining the same funding base.
And
Go ahead, Ms. Holland.
can you please state your name?
Yes, my apologies. Karen Powell, Deputy Assistant Superintendent for Early Childhood Care and Education.
Thank you, Karen. So remember for next time, talk about the pilot, the voucher system, which I was not aware of, but whatever experience that is, and also the Ready Start networks and the community network lead agencies that will administer this fund. So I'm kind of confused about why is it the department designating these funds and why are these agencies? So it's just a good overview so we can understand
Yes.
what's happening here.
And we are making that transition. For the pilot, the networks administered the funds, but we are making that transition to it all moving up under the department again. And I'll also say that these funds really helped keep children in care because there were 3,500 children in these seats last year. So the funds this year are about keeping those infants and toddlers in care through their
You're looking at 6,500.
We're hoping to move up to that many with new enrollees.
Besides what Dr. Davis mentioned, which is a great idea, number of served, the cost, and the data behind all of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have two public comment cards. Nicole Flores from Family Health and Families of Acadiana is in support of 5.5 but does not wish to speak. And Lillian Dijon from Louisiana Youth Leadership Forum is in support and will provide information if needed. Okay, board members, are there any other questions concerning any of the items? We have another. Okay. The Amber Jackson, no, it doesn't specify which items. Jackson, which item are you?
Teacher survey responses?
The what? Okay, different meeting, so we'll hold that one down, okay? You're gonna hold that one. Okay.
She said she had a card.
Superintendent Bochet?
You don't have to.
On 5.5, we have a card? Do we have another card on 5.5? Could you just, Nicole Flores and Lillian. Okay, do you have a card? If not, just please fill it out.
Yes, I figured it out, but I can't figure it out.
Okay, could you possibly, when you're finished, fill out another one?
Yes.
All right, could you, and I'll give you the 3 minutes. Please identify yourself.
Well, my name is Juana Moreno, I'm here representing the Vial program. I have a question about a couple of items in this point. One about energized, praxis exam, computer science 6 to 12. The other is Ignite, K to 5, computer science, both teacher training. My question is, these are funds for directly for the parishes to compensate the teachers, and in particular also to pay the praxis exam. I mean, my program has been training teachers for 6 years. We are ready to integrate praxis preparation in our program. Would the parishes use those funds to go through our program, get then pay the praxis, or no? Because in one of the items, say praxis exam, training with Southeastern Louisiana University. So my question is, are these funds for any training, are open to any training, or no? They are restricted to a specific training? That's all. Thank you.
Dr. Brumman, do you have a response?
So this item is to try to increase the number of teachers that are certified across the state of Louisiana to teach computer science. And so this is an allocation, and so the allocation will go to the school systems, and it's to provide support to 1,100 teachers for their exam fees, stipend for the teacher, travel costs within trainings, and substitute fees needed to cover the teacher's classroom while they attend the training.
So it's for
So
any training?
if the speaker has a specific request, I would just ask that you follow up with our office about what that request might be.
Okay. Any provider the teacher can use those funds for any provider of the praxis training, yes or no? That's what is not clear to me.
My interpretation, I don't know the departments, is these funds are allocated to the school districts for the teachers. And that would then be a local decision as to, we would pay the praxis fees, we would pay for substitutes, and we would pay for whatever training that district feels is necessary. So you have to go through the individual school district.
Okay, so it's the teacher of the parish or the school.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions about board members concerning any items? Dr. Gopi?
I have a recusal on item 5.5. CCAP E3 seats, real-time early access to literacy, energized praxis CS training, Ignite K5 CS training, math refresh pilot.
I have a same list. Any, Mr. Castillo?
Yes, I also have a recusal with respect to item 5.5, LSMSA energized praxis CS training.
All right, anyone else? Dr. Davis?
I have a recusal on item 5.5, Volunteers of America Greater Baton Rouge CCAP B3 seats, Volunteers of America Greater Baton Rouge Red Start Networks, LSU Lab School Energized Practice CS training, LSU Lab School Ignite K5 CS training.
All right. Any other recusals? Any other questions about board members? Okay, any objections to the motion? Hearing none, other than what we've already done, motion passes. Next item.
On page 127, item 5.6, consideration of a cooperative endeavor agreement in response to legislation in the 2023 regular legislative session. Recommendation is to approve.
A motion, please. Dr. Davis, do I have a second? Mr. Rock. Superintendent, yeah, you came on this to present. All right, any questions by the board members? Okay, any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
On page 130, item 6.1, consideration of AG funding cycle activities, building the AG annual program and budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. The recommendation is to approve the programming budget and the AG priority areas as outlined.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the 24-25 budget? Okay, Dr. Volpe, do I have a second? Dr. Davis, I have one comment card. Celine Vandenbolt, representing herself, wishes to speak, supports the recommendation.
All right. Hello, my name is Aline Vandenbold, and I am here representing myself today. I'm a graduate student at University of Louisiana at Lafayette. I am getting a master's degree in education with a concentration in French immersion education, and I want to come show my support because I am a product of East Baton Rouge Parish's public school system, and specifically the immersion program. And so I have directly benefited from this funding throughout my entire academic career. I started my education at Baton Rouge Flame, back then it was called South Boulevard. Then I proceeded to Westdale Middle School, where I was part of the gifted program as well as the immersion program from their Baton Rouge High School, and then received 2 bachelor's degrees from LSU, one in French and one in anthropology. Throughout my career, especially within the immersion department, I had teachers from all over the French world, whether that be from France or Belgium, but also from Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Louisiana. We also have teachers from Réunion, from Senegal, and from many other Francophone-speaking countries. This provided me and my fellow peers with not only the opportunity to leave the country. Many times I have spent anywhere from 3 weeks to 9 months in foreign countries, being able to continue with my anthropology degree and with my French degree. I have peers who have been able to excel in the military due to their biliteracy. I have students who have gotten internships with the Smithsonian and who are at Georgetown studying international relations, all because we really had this amazing community from abroad that was partially funded by this program, where we had a very holistic and very intersectional education. And so while I studied and traveled, I would say that so many of my classmates have really, really benefited for this. So I just wanted to say, please support the allocation of the AG programs, especially the constitutional category for foreign languages. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vandenbold.
Of course.
Look forward to having you teaching our schools.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any questions about board members on item 6.1? Are there any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
On page 132, item 6.2, consideration of AG funding cycle activities, revisions to the fiscal year 2023-2024 AG programming budget for an AG statewide special project for fiscal year 2023-2024. The Bessie President recommends approval of revisions to the fiscal year 2023-2024 AG programming budget, amending the statewide and block allocation and adding a special project to the programming budget, noting that this is not an increase in the total allocation authorized by the legislature during the 2023 legislative session. The Bessie President also recommends approval of the AG Special Project Award in the amount of $100,000 to the Louisiana Department of Education for fiscal year 2023-2024 for implementation of the graduation appeals policy.
Motion by Dr. Berkeley, second by Ms. Orange Jones. Do we have any comment cards? We have comment by Brian Davis, representing B, opposes the motion, does not wish to speak. Any other comment cards? Okay, questions? Opening the floor. Mr. Garvey.
Yes. I think if we would pose this question, I think we may need to have Ms. Hunt and then speak to us. Please. 173801 applies, I think.
Yeah,
If
17.
you had a chance to look at that statute, and what do you think it says about the appropriateness of this moving of funds?
I have looked at it, and 173801C2 states that Bessie shall annually submit to the legislature and the governor a proposed program and budget for the expenditure of monies in the support fund. And so I interpret that as meaning both the program and the monies are approved by the legislature. So the programs that have been approved for 8G for this year are already in place. A change could be made to next year, but this can't be done without legislative approval. Changing the program.
When you say this can't be done, could you say that it would be against the statute if we were to do this?
Yes.
Okay. Once again, we would be violating the statute.
In my opinion, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Hunt, I guess I'll ask the superintendent this question, and then he can tell me if it's appropriate to ask Ms. Hunt. When Bessie made a mid-year transfer of 8G funds in order to pay for the computer upgrades around protecting student privacy, an 8G transfer was made by this board. I can't remember the exact year. It was 2011, I believe. That transfer did not go before the legislature, nor was it a result of an appropriation by the legislature. So can you tell me why we've had a history of providing these kinds of mid-year adjustments in the past, and then all of a sudden it's not okay now?
We've had a history of making budget adjustments. I don't think that we've had a history of funding new programs that had not been previously approved.
Ms. Hunt, is your mic on?
Yes, maybe I'm not close
Could you
enough.
bring it a little bit closer, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess you'll have to explain to me how changes to the computer system regarding student privacy that were approved by the legislature, so they were new. It was in response to Representative Schroeder's legislation, but yet they allocated no money for that change, and as a result, a transfer of 8G funds to the tune of $1 million was made without legislative approval to the 8G budget, right? So the legislature in the fiscal note noted that Bessie could decide to use 8G money in that regard or to not use 8G money in that regard. But it was not a legislative allocation, nor did it go to the joint legislative committee on the budget.
And I don't know what programs were approved that year. I'd have to research that. I can't answer that off the top of my head. Sorry.
Just a quick, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification, because I believe at least some of us were here then. I think it was actually 2014. I remember us. Okay, just want to double check that was the case. Some of us were actually here when that actually happened. Thanks. Thank you. I forgot about that.
And Ms. Chairman?
Are we discussing a change in a special project versus what has been approved by the legislature? I mean, we're adding here, special projects is added to the allocation. So is that what the debate is here?
Ms. Boucher.
Superintendent Boucher, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, hold on. All right, Ms. Holloway, do you want to answer Ms. Holloway's
Well, I was
question?
just going to suggest, since this is a Bessie item, not a department item, it might be more appropriate for the Bessie attorney responding to this as opposed to the department attorney. And I appreciate Ms. Hunt's responses. I'm just questioning the appropriateness of this questioning of the department attorney. When Bessie has
And then
a staff attorney.
Ms. Roche, I was just going to say, we have staff that oversees our 8G funds, and so they are prepared to come and speak on this item.
Davis,
Thank you.
could you identify yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Darry Ward. I'm the AG accounting administrator. What we do 60 days before the session, we have to submit a program and budget to the legislature, which we've done. We can go back at any time and we can make a revision. We will have to submit a new budget to them or approve, for approval. We just have to submit it to them. they don't actually approve programs. They approve the categories. So when you see block, statewide, that's not a program, that's a category. As long as the individual programs fall within one of the constitutional categories, they're okay. So they don't actually approve programs. It's the
General
budget.
categories.
Yeah, general categories. So
Right.
we don't list programs.
Ms. Boucher, I would just also add that, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the policy, there's been talk about how we fund the policy, and so, as I said earlier today, Dr. Davis, Mrs. Davis, and I got on a phone with people with the Division of Administration to talk through this process, and came up with a plan that they felt comfortable with. So I know I said that earlier today, it wasn't connected to this item. So board members, I just want you to know that this is, we've done our work on this, and I appreciate the staff for being able to come forward and answer those questions. And I ask the board to support this motion, so we can get this work taken care of.
And I'm going to add to that, you know, I've also been on the AG Advisory Committee as we develop this, and there are constitutional categories for which AG is appropriate, and then there are general categories that we do each year. For example, we fund a lot of the leap assessment with this, and it doesn't necessarily say leap assessment, but it fits in one of the categories. The appeals process could fit in these categories, as well as many of these programs that we fund under AG. So my understanding was the same as your understanding. The legislature does not approve the specific programs. They just ratify the categories under which Bessie has, to my knowledge, Bessie has the ability to fund programs under these broad categories. So I'm comfortable with this.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, I was just going to question Ms. Hunt, as the LDO attorney, I'll ask the question here, but you do agree, Ms. Hunt, that that's inappropriate for these funds to be transferred in the creation of this new program. That's what I believe I heard you say earlier.
Yes, that's correct. The statute does say proposed program and budget that are approved.
And that's what they thought we did, that we already turned down.
I wanted the LDO's attorney to answer a question for me, and Bessie has a staff attorney who I'm sure could answer questions.
All right, Mr. Garber.
Yes, ma'am. This question to Bessie staff, and it goes to the issue that was brought up about, what was it, categories was the term that was used? And the category, if I'm reading this right, that the legislature approved, that's relevant here, is block allocation. For that category, they approved, I think, $9,870,000. And what this proposal would do would move money out of that category and into another category. My understanding is that we can move money within a category because the legislature approved money for that category, but we cannot move it from one category to another, which is what's being attempted here. Is that your understanding, or is your understanding different from that?
So when you say category, we're talking about one of the constitutional categories, it's 7. They're listed at the beginning, exemplary programs, research. All of that is approved. That has not changed. That's in the Constitution. As long as our individual programs fall within one of those constitutional categories, and they also have to follow, like one of our priority areas that we have, that the board approves, each year. Every program has to do that. So none of that is changing. As long as whatever program you have in block or statewide or special project, it doesn't matter what you call it, as long as they fit within one of the constitutional categories that's allowed.
Well, in this case, the legislature approved, as I said, $9,870,000 for block allocations. My understanding is that this special project is not a block allocation, it's not a block program. It's not a block category, whatever term you'd like to use. It doesn't fit in the block allocation, so it would be changing what the legislature approved the allocation to be used for.
No, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know. It's not, because the legislature does not go through each of our individual programs and approve the programs like that. We have tons of proposals. We have over 100 and something proposals. They don't go through each one and approve that. As long as our proposals that the staff approves falls within one of the constitutional categories for strategic areas, that's up to the discretion of the staff to approve the proposals. So I think we may be getting like proposals and categories and all that. The legislature has this one broad document that they approve. The constitutional categories, of priority areas, all of that. As long as our proposals fall within one of those categories, that's up to staff. That's up to, they have to submit proposals to us. We have to make sure they fall in line with one of those, categories of everything is correct. But the legislature does not, by that detail, they don't approve by that detail.
I think we'll have some people who will testify that they disagree with that. And this is
Well, this is what we give them. We don't give them, we have over 100, and we don't, at the time that we're approving a budget, that's like a year in advance when we first approve it. So we don't even start with the programs until after the budget is approved. So we don't start getting proposals until August and September of the following year. So they can't approve something, programs that we haven't even, nobody has even submitted any proposal for. So they don't get into that.
Maybe a slightly different way. Do you think that special projects fits under block allocations?
It's a special category. It's not.
So you don't think it fits under block allocations?
But it does fit in a constitutional category, yes. And it
But not
does have
block
a priority
allocations.
vote. Exactly.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Dr. Bo?
I do want to add, board members, because I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier. So the money that will be spent on the appeal policy is not money that people are losing out on. It's money that went unclaimed. And I'm probably not getting the wording just right, but it's the districts and non-public schools have the opportunity to claim money. These are dollars that went unclaimed. So no one is losing out on something that they would have had. And I know that is an important point to a number of you. And I think somebody else might have had comments.
Right, I get those, it's carryover funds from the prior year. Because I think the approval, instead of the 20 million, the stage wasn't around 14
That was
something
the year
billion.
before. I didn't get with you. No, that was the amount that was approved.
That was the amount that was
Yeah.
approved, okay.
But we did have to make an adjustment in 2021.
And we do have to carry it.
Yes.
And we do have a
Yeah,
carryover.
Yeah,
The
because
part-
the agencies, they have to submit proposals. So we give every school district the opportunity to submit a proposal. They don't all choose to do that. And therefore, we always, each year, we'll have some money unexpended that will just roll over into the next year
Yeah.
to be used.
We all
we're
have,
not
we all
even
submit
guaranteed.
proposals after the approval by the legislature. So they
Yes.
don't even know what the programs are when they're approving.
That's correct.
This is also an estimate. This is based on revenue and based on gas and oil revenue and its investments. So we are not always guaranteed that we will have that amount of money in our, and it's not put into our account at the beginning of the year by the legislature. It rolls in monthly based on investments. So that number is very iffy anyway. In fact, in '21, we had to revise the overall budget and cut it by $500,000, and we took it from the department. They graciously gave that money up because we didn't have enough money in the fund to fund what we had approved in our budget, and that forced us to have to send over a new budget at that point. And then in 2014, we also
So at
revised the
that time, we
budget
moved
to,
money from statewide into the block.
yes, we actually moved it
By
and
motion.
notified the legislature. of that, because we had the treasurer notified us that we're not gonna have that much money. But we do have also, and at that time, we didn't have any money in carry forward because due to COVID, our investments were really not yielding anything. So we typically would have had money in our carry forward, which last year the department did use 800,000 of their funds in statewide. So we would have had that, for example, in order to cover something the next year. So HE is a very unique grant fund that's unlike any other, I think. So we do have other carry forward dollars. We just cannot exceed the allocation that the legislature
Any other?
given to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I am struck. Thank you, Dr. Davis, for the precedent example from 2014 that at least a handful of us were here and voted in favor of. I'm just curious, Ms. Davis, if you have any recollection of that, because I feel as though that is actually quite similar in many ways to this. And so, it does beg the question as to why this is somehow sort of being called into question when those of us who voted for it in the past actually were fine with it when it was a different issue. Can you just speak to what you recall about that?
So in 2014, the legislature passed a law requiring the department and the board to create student identifiers as opposed to use Social Security.
Yes.
And the department, it was an unfunded mandate, and the department didn't have the funds to do it. So we created a special project of $1 million because we had the money carry forward, to give them that money in order to enact that, and the board approved it, and then we sent over the revised program to the legislature.
Thank you. Any other
And I'd
questions?
just like to point out what makes this example appropriate here is that typically in the rulemaking process, if the legislature passed a law with appropriations, then you don't have to go through a process of having it approved by the Joint Legislative Committee on the budget. But the rulemaking process states explicitly that if there's not an appropriation, then it should be going through that process, and the 8G funds did not, because according to the Division of Administration, we have the ability to move those funds and have that approved by the Division of Administration.
Okay. Mr. Garber.
I have a question for the Executive Director. You said that after we made those changes, let me back up. Do you know what point in the year it was that we made those changes in 2014?
June or August?
This was after the session, so whenever the session. Because I think that was something that happened in the session. So it had to be June, July. But the board, budget was already.
Okay. I believe, the budget was already approved, so it had to come back to the board. I can look it up. I want to say August.
Okay.
Maybe December. It might have been December.
Follow-up question. You said that we notified the legislature that we did that. How did we notify them?
We send them a revised program and budget and a letter.
And who did we send them to?
The governor, and then we send it to, this was the one it goes to the speaker, and the speaker of the House and the, House and chair, Senate chair.
And did they send anything back in response?
No, sir.
Did they send back an objection?
No, sir.
All right, any other questions, comments, discussion?
I have further questions for someone else.
All right, Mr.
Not
Garber.
Ms. Davis.
All right, Mr. Garber.
Yeah, I think we have some representatives from the legislative fiscal office here. If they can come down.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Alan Boxberger. I am the Louisiana Legislative Fiscal Officer.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming down to the table. My understanding is that you're familiar with the situation that we're talking about here. Can you tell us what you think about it? I'm not sure that whether we should use the words appropriate or not. But can you comment on what is being proposed here?
Yes, sir. So our office is involved with the, excuse me. Our office is involved with the construction of the fiscal and economic impact statement, which our office received initial communication back in June for July file for world promulgation, and then it was subsequently pulled and resubmitted in September for October. At that time, we were informed that SE had sufficient funding that would not be used in the current year, that 8G could be reallocated to this purpose, and we reflected that information in the fiscal and economic impact statement. As I review the proposal that is before Bessie today, it has been structured in the same way that the language appears in the General Appropriation Bill, which is Act 447 or House Bill 1 of the 2023 legislative session. In Act 447, there is specific language that says elementary and secondary education purposes identified below are funded within the statutory dedication amount appropriated above, and they are identified separately here to establish the specific amount appropriated for each purpose, and then it identifies the 4 categories: block grant, statewide allocation, review and evaluation of assessment proposals, and management oversight. That language, creating a special project, does not currently appear in the appropriation bill. So I would suggest to Bessie that if you try to move money out of one of these 4 approved categories into another, it may fly in the face of legislative intent and the language that appears in the appropriation bill. That language has appeared in the appropriation bill for more than 20 years. And I can tell you that while there may be precedent, it would be subject to legislative oversight and other parties that may be interested. I don't know if anyone would seek a remedy, but because there is specific language in the appropriation that these are the 4 categories that would be expended. If you were to adopt a resolution saying that you wanted to use $100,000 within this category for this purpose, I don't think there would be an issue, but when you try to create a 5th category that is not delineated in the appropriation bill, I don't know if someone will raise issue, but it certainly opens you up to that.
So what you're saying is we could, within, in your opinion, within these 4 categories, or within either the block allocation or the statewide allocation, designate $100,000 of it to be a special project within that category? Correct,
as long as the project meets the defined authority within that category. I don't think that would be an issue. When the legislature appropriates funds, we are generally appropriating for activities at a program level. As long as the agency is meeting its mission, objectives, and goals, it really has broad latitude on how it spends those funds unless it's a line item appropriation. This one's a little bit different in that the legislature identified those 4 categories and did not identify a 5th one called special projects. Normally, if you wanted to create a 5th category, we would see that in a supplemental appropriation during the legislative session to move funds from that one category and create a new one or move it from one category to another. But that's not what's being proposed today.
But you would have no issues with the special, I mean, because within each of these major, we have hundreds and hundreds.
Absolutely, and
So
you
it
all
could be
modify.
a special project within
Yes,
the
ma'am.
statewide allocation.
You all modify what your projects are within those categories on a regular basis, as I understand. So I'm just, and again, I don't know if anybody would raise issue or seek remedy, but when you identify a 5th program that's not contained in the appropriation bill, that causes me to raise my eyebrows.
Can I ask, well, I do want to ask a question because part I think of what's confusing is we have constitutional categories, which are the places we can spend, what we can spend the money on, right? So when we say category, it's what we can spend the money on. When I hear you say category, I think it more resembles what we're looking at on page 133 for anybody that's following along, the different programs, right? So those programs are block allocation, statewide, management oversight, the review, evaluation, and assessment of proposals. So what I think I hear you saying is that we can do this, but then you would feel more that we would people would have less room to object, which we know there's at least one individual who wants to object no matter what, if we were to put that money in a statewide allocation instead. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I think reading the descriptions, and I'm not an expert in this and I'm not an attorney, but reading the descriptions of these 4 categories, it seems that this expenditure most closely correlates to the activities under statewide. But I understand that you're wanting to move money out of block grant into statewide, and I'm only looking at the 4 categories that are in the appropriation bill, and I'm looking at this from the standpoint of an appropriator, not
right.
constitutional.
So what we call program, you call a category in the House bill. Is that right?
That's correct.
So what I call a program, you call a category, and then in addition to that, we have the constitutional categories that we have to meet. So that's fine. So Ms. Martin, is there anything that would prevent us from revising this to, instead of moving the $100,000 to a special project, move the $100,000 to a statewide allocation? Is there anything that would prevent us from doing that? Okay, so I would like for us to update this to just put the $100,000 in the statewide allocation.
Okay, so you would like to amend the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then within the allocation, to designate $100,000 as one of these special projects or proposals under that allocation?
Under that statewide allocation, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you made the motion.
Ms. Orange Jones seconded, and it looks like she's in support of this decision.
Okay.
I really appreciate you coming here today, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We
Okay, sure.
appreciate your input.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Garvey.
I have another question. I think I'll say even more importantly, if we pass this motion, is it going to cause you to issue another fiscal and economic impact statement as required in statute 49-961?
No, sir. The fiscal and economic impact statement reflects that the planned expenditure would come from HG. It did not delve into these specific categories. That rule has already been promulgated, and the FEIS has gone through with it. You all are in the process of it going into effect at this point. We would not go back and revise the fiscal and economic impact statement unless you made a substantive change to the actual notice of intent. At that point, we would have to review it and a potpourri review to determine if it made any changes to the fiscal and economic impact statement. But as described, I don't think our analysis would change. The only comment I would have to the motion, I just wanted to clarify if the proposal is to move $100,000 from block grant into statewide, you may run afoul of the same concern that were brought up. If you're just saying that within statewide, you're going to say 100,000 of the current allocation will be moved to this purpose, that would ameliorate my concern. But
I have a question for Bessie, the representative. Is the entire $9.87 billion in each of those 2 categories obligated right now? The words in the block allocation, in the statewide allocation, it's already approved as of right now, $9.870 million. Or all of those funds currently obligated?
No, it would be doing the same thing. We would still have to take the money from the unallocated, there's more than unallocated from block, we can move it into statewide. So increase statewide.
Say we don't move any money. We leave $1,870,000 in each category.
Well, all of the statewide has been allocated,
Okay.
not all of the blocks.
Well,
So there's
then
not,
we can designate $100,000 within the block allocation for this purpose.
we could, I mean,
We could approve that. Bessie could approve today $100,000 within that current allocation to be used for this purpose.
I would prefer if it was moved into statewide, only because it applies to, it's like block is usually specific to a certain agency, to the district, stuff like that. Since this initiative would reflect overall, like as a state as a whole, it would be better to have it into statewide. And there's unallocated money in blocks, so you could allocate 100,000 more into statewide and use that and have a special project under the statewide category. Block. Yeah. Only because we allocated all of it basically to the Department of Education. Not to say that they're,
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent Bochet. So,
Yes.
the gentleman from the fiscal office, did you suggest some language that would make you more comfortable? I didn't understand it. So with the current motion that's on the board?
I was saying that if you try to change the allocation as approved in the general appropriations bill, I think you open yourself up to exposure to challenge. So if you leave the dollar figures at $9.87 million in each of those two larger categories, I don't think you would open up that avenue. But if you move money between those categories because the legislature said we are appropriating the following amounts for the following purposes, and if you release a piece of paper saying you are moving money between these categories defined in the same manner as they are in the general appropriations bill, I think that could be problematic for you.
And that's your opinion on it?
My opinion, I'm not
Thank
attorney.
Ms. Bochet, is that what you were suggesting?
Well, I was suggesting leaving the amounts the same and designating $100,000 within the existing allocation to be used for this purpose.
Okay. And it sounds like that is safest on the legislative side. Maybe not the way that our staff prefers to do it, but can you pull it off for us, Ms. Martin?
I mean, we can. Historically, there has been more than $100,000 unallocated that hasn't been expended in both statewide and block. We would have the fund in either category. I'm sure.
And just as a matter of procedure, if you approve this in this manner and you get later in the fiscal year and discover that you are not going to have sufficient authority remaining in that category, you can always approach the legislature during the supplemental appropriations process to move money between those categories and have it align with what your plan is. So if you were to approve, say, I want $100,000 out of the statewide program, and you get later in the fiscal year and you realize that your committed obligations are only going to leave you $50,000, you could ask the legislature at that point if they would be willing to move $50,000 out of block grant into that category. But again, that would be subject to legislative vote.
So it sounds like to play it safe then, Holly, it would be to amend your motion that the graduation appeals process be funded out of the statewide allocation, which would satisfy both.
I would say, I would suggest under either of those two allocations where funds are available,
Ooh.
Bessie's staff to fund $100,000 out of either the block allocation or the statewide, wherever the
The funds are available. Ooh, I like it. Look at this brainstorming in a meeting. Look what happens when we work together.
All right, and then Ms. Armstrong, would you accept that? Yes, thank you so much. All right, Mr. Garvey.
To summarize what I think I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, this board could attempt to correct the violation of statute 49-961 by asking for another fiscal and economic impact statement from you, but they would have to file a new notice of intent in order to make that correction of that violation. Is that right?
I don't think I testified as to a violation, sir. My statement was, the only time we would be revising the fiscal and economic impact statement is if you went and opened up the original notice of intent to make revisions to that document. At that point, the register would ask us to look at the revisions to the notice of intent and notify them whether it created a change to the fiscal and economic impact statement.
So if we're not changing any of those allocations, is that?
If you're not changing anything in the notice of intent, which is the rule, we would not change the fiscal and economic impact statement. All we reflected in the fiscal and economic impact statement is that this planned expenditure would be allocated from 8G by Bessie. We did not address what category it was coming from or anything to that effect.
I would like to remind Bessie what I remember Mr. Reinwood said, which is that without a different fiscal and economic impact statement that would state that there is no additional expenditure of state funds, this would be a violation of that statute. So if y'all want to ask Mr. Reinwood to come up, or if he wants to come up to verify that, I leave that up to you. I think that's what he testified to.
On what this gentleman said?
No, Mr. Reinwood testified to what is being proposed here is not going to solve the problem of the violation of that statute.
Okay, even if we're, Mr. Garvey, even if we're not changing the allocation at all, the allocations remain the same. Bessie has a latitude within these allocations. We fund hundreds of proposals under each of these every year.
Yes, but you
And it
need
changes.
a fiscal and economic impact statement that says that there are no expenditures of additional state funds. And
There won't be.
you don't have that.
We're not changing any additional state.
But the current fiscal and economic impact statement that's on record, that was printed in the register, says that there will be an additional expenditure of state funds. And that statute says that we cannot propose a rule with such a price unless there's an emergency or if the legislature specifically allocates funds to the purpose.
Well, would you like to call something up? You have that.
I think it's already been stated.
Madam Chair, we call for the question.
All right, we have a call for the question. So we vote on the call for the question.
What's the call?
Roll call, please.
What's the call for the question?
Call for the question. So we vote on a call for the question.
Call for the question, vote. Dr. Volpe?
Yes.
Dr. Volpe votes yes. Ms. Castile? Castile, yes. Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Davis, yes. Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis, yes. Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey, yes. Ms. Holloway?
Yes.
Ms. Holloway, yes. Mr. Mallory?
Yes.
Mr. Mallory votes yes. Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Morris, yes. Ms. Orange Jones?
Yes.
You say yes?
Yes.
I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Rock? Yes. Ms. Volpe, you want to vote?
Yes, I'll vote yes.
Motion passed for the call for the question.
Okay, now we'll get to the vote.
We're going to do a roll call vote.
Is everybody clear on the motion?
Can you repeat, please?
We already had, we don't have any other.
No, we don't.
We don't have anything else. We've done that.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Okay, could we repeat the
Yeah,
motion?
can we repeat the motion?
Could I repeat the motion? All right, I will try to repeat the motion.
You.
We are directing Bessie staff to allocate $100,000 under either block allocation or state block allocation, whatever is available for the purposes of for the appeals process.
Graduation appeals.
And approve revisions to the budget.
And what?
Approve the revisions to the budget.
Okay. All right. Could you do,
Roll call vote.
yes, roll call first.
Dr. Volpe?
Yes.
Dr. Volpe, yes. Mr. Castile?
Yes.
Castillo, yes. Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Davis, yes. Ms. Ellis?
No.
Ms. Ellis votes no. Ms. Garvey?
No.
Ms. Garvey, no. Ms. Holloway?
No.
Ms. Holloway, no. Ms. Hellerly?
No.
Mr. Miller? No. Ms. Morris?
No.
Ms. Morris, no. Ms. Orange Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Orange Jones, yes. Mr. Rock?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Bochamp?
Yes.
Motion passed. You vote for tie.
All right, next item.